Wild wigs, biting jokes, and infectious laughter were Phyllis Diller's trademarks. Her admirers saw an optimistic, successful, and self-assured lady. However, Diller had personal problems that nobody knew about when he was not in the limelight. She endured considerably more than just comedic moments in her life, including devastating losses to loved ones and health struggles that almost cost her everything. But how did this affect her career and personal life? Come with us as we investigate this discovery further. The private life of Phyllis Diller. On the outside, Phyllis Diller's rise to stardom was a comedic one. But beneath all the bright makeup and outrageous outfits, there was a real lady who had serious problems. The ups and downs of her own life shaped the strong woman, who would go on to become a legendary voice in comedy. She married Sherwood Anderson Diller for the first time. They raised 6 children in a huge family. Their home life was full of energy and demands for a long time. The difficulties of caring for a large number of young children included an abundance of duties, lengthy work days, and an unending list of things to accomplish. Phyllis struggled mightily to maintain the household running smoothly, while simultaneously clinging to her aspirations of pursuing a career outside the home. Yet there were tragic moments in family life as well. She was forever changed by the devastating loss of one of her 6 infant children. A second harsh truth would dawn on her as the years passed. It was unfair that she had to outlive both of her adult children. Those in attendance only saw the upbeat, humorous performer on stage. She kept her personal troubles, including her losses, to herself. She buried her sorrow deep inside, but she hid it with comedy, performing laughter as a way to cope. Marrying was also not an easy task. The strain of caring for a big family was magnified when Phyllis and Sherwood encountered their fair share of financial difficulties. Striking a balance between home life and ambition was already challenging when money was short. On stage, she hoped to make people laugh, so she decided to pursue performing. But bills, children, and everyday survival were often her reality. Over time, comedy evolved from a mere aspiration into a means of subsistence. In private, she relied on laughing to alleviate the burden she was carrying. Phyllis sought out sources of support throughout this ordeal. Claude M. Bristol's 1948 motivational book, The Magic of Believing, was one of her influences. For her, this book marked a turning point. It inspired her to believe in herself, gain confidence, and take the first daring steps toward a comedic career. She went on to say that she might never have mustered the nerve to attempt had she not read that book. Her romantic adventures continued after her first marriage ended. In 1965, she wed actor Ward Donovan. There were early signs of problems for the union. Upon discovering his drunkenness and dual attraction, she promptly filed for a divorce 3 months later. A lot of ups and downs occurred during the marriage. Unfortunately, the couple's reconciliation on the final day of the divorce did not endure. They officially parted ways in 1975. This second marriage served as further evidence that her personal life, similar to her professional life, was never devoid of challenges. Still, love re-entered her life, but this time it took a different shape. Phyllis was married to Robert P. Hastings from 1985 to 1996. This union, in contrast to her previous relationships, provided her joy and respect. She went on to name him her soulmate when he showed her how much she meant to her and how much he believed in her autonomy. This partnership was a precious gift for a lady who had spent her life balancing sorrow, ambition, and duty. It was even more painful to lose him in 1996. The happiness she had throughout her time with him, nevertheless, remained with her always. Phyllis continued to turn her personal demons into stage stories, even as she battled with her own emotional suffering. She often made fun of her imaginary husband, Fang, whom she imagined. Drawing inspiration from the comic strip The Lockhorns, Fang was created to offer a light-hearted take on the challenges that married life may bring. She was able to keep her spirits up in the face of what could have crushed them by finding humor in her problems. Phyllis would often make fun of herself in her act. Despite her actual culinary prowess, she would pretend in her routines that she was a lousy cook. After her chili recipe became famous, she licensed it and began selling it nationwide under the name Phyllis Diller Chili. Through the use of exaggeration, she was able to conceal some aspects of her real life while simultaneously revealing others, demonstrating how she blurred the line between stage and reality. She was very forthright about her use of plastic surgery as she became older. A total of 15 surgeries were performed on her beginning at the age of 55. Phyllis spoke it openly and even incorporated it into her act, in contrast to many celebrities who attempted to keep such things secret. Aside from mocking our culture's fixation on physical attractiveness, it served as a means of managing her public persona. Even more so, Her candor about the matter was highlighted in a 1993 national television segment. Though the public perceives Phyllis Diller primarily via her wild side, the truth behind it is known only to a select few. Phyllis Diller's untold origin story. The life of Phyllis Diller predates all of the wigs, giggles, and flashing lights. Who she became as an adult was influenced by her formative years. She was shaped by her childhood and educational experiences, which were filled with both easy and hard times. One must enter the still formative years that gave her fortitude in order to comprehend her path to the stage. She came into this world in Lima, Ohio, to parents Perry and Francis Driver. The fact that her parents were already adults when she was born had a subtle but significant impact on her formative years. Traditional values, heavy responsibilities, and advanced years all played significant roles in this home. Young Phyllis benefited from the lessons of structure and restrictions imparted to her by her family's religious beliefs. Growing up in a household with adults who were already bearing the weight of life made her acutely aware of her responsibilities, the weight of expectation placed on her, and the gravity of the situation. Her upbringing was anything from carefree and easygoing. The darker aspects of life were instead presented to her at a young age. What it was like to live with continual responsibility, the precariousness of health, and the nearness of death were all things she witnessed. Her humor is a product of the resiliency and empathy she cultivated as a result of these formative events. Although there was little glitz, I learned a lot about perseverance from my childhood. Phyllis and her parents did not have an overly affectionate connection. Frances, her mom, was cold and unapproachable, and her dad was too busy worrying to be a loving father figure. Phyllis, as a little girl, longed for acceptance and the chance to be heard and recognized in her environment. She was more perceptive and quick to find attention-getting techniques through expression and wit, due to the lack of emotional connectedness. As a young girl, she learned the value of performance, since it allowed her to receive the kind of attention that genuine affection could not always provide. Still, she had aspirations. She has a profound passion for music from a young age. Her initial love in the arts was the piano, and she aspired to be a pianist. She set her sights on music and enrolled in Chicago's Sherwood Music Conservatory with unwavering resolve. She was able to find an audience for her artistic expression during her time at the conservatory. The piano allowed her to express emotions that were difficult for her to put into words. The currents of life, however, drew her in different directions. She had genuine aspirations of becoming a concert pianist, but she had to put her plans on hold due to financial difficulties and the need for stability. After dropping out of the conservatory, she worked jobs that paid the bills but did little to nourish her creative spirit. She worked hard, took care of her responsibilities, and kept her dreams close to her heart. During this time, a different aspect of her talent started to emerge. She managed to deal with life's challenges by incorporating comedy into her routine. Her incisive mind and lightning-fast wit brought her solace. Initially, she only intended for herself and her loved ones to enjoy this brand of humor. It was a welcome relief that helped break the monotony and find happiness in the mundane. Even though she couldn't quite see it happening, the seeds of her comedic destiny were slowly sowed. Discipline, disappointment, and resilience molded Phyllis Diller by the time these formative years came to a close. Because of her parents' estrangement, she learned to look for approval from other sources. Even while it had made her yearn for lightness, her early brush with death and hardship had strengthened her. Furthermore, her musical training had equipped her with the skills necessary for performing, the self-assurance to step onto the stage, and the insight that art may lead to liberation. Though she had not yet become the comic genius who would make crowds go wild, she had created the foundation for her future success. Phyllis had to create a character so memorable that people would laugh whenever they saw her, before she could establish her spot in comedy. The hidden challenges of Phyllis Diller's celebrity. Phyllis Diller did more than just perform stand-up comedy when she came into the limelight. She made herself forgettable by giving life to an unforgettable universe, unforgettable persona, and unforgettable voice. She became famous for more than just what she said. It was also how she said it, the image she created, and the secret she kept hidden behind her performance persona. When she first took the stage, she made fun of herself. By playing up her imperfections, she made herself the object of ridicule. Her fictitious husband, her cooking, and her appearance were all targets of her jokes. This look was groundbreaking for a period when ladies were expected to carry themselves with poise and honor. Wild hair, flashy outfits, and quips that brought her down to earth were all ways Phyllis disregarded such norms. She became known for her peculiar laugh, a harsh and distinctive sound that left an impression. She was beloved by audiences for her audacity in embracing her role as the clown. especially in a culture where women were expected to be ultra-polished. Fang, her imaginary husband, was one of her most well-known creations. Despite his supposed laziness, cheapness, and cruelty, Fang did not exist. Phyllis helped many of the women in the audience who were frustrated by their marriages, but were too embarrassed to speak out by making him a character. She made comedic gold out of the mundane challenges of daily life by making them amusing. Her image was meticulously constructed with extravagant hairstyles, daring attire, and a touch of unusual vivacity. However, she harbored fears beneath her glitz. She started getting plastic surgery at age 55 and ended up having 15 procedures. She stood out because she was so forthright about them, even making fun of the processes. She managed to elicit both laughter and sympathy from the audience by making fun of her efforts to slow down time. Still, the stresses of trying to keep up a facade in a society that was so critical of women were laid bare by these operations. Phyllis's career reached new heights as soon as her act became known. She started off performing in nightclubs, but her star grew even brighter when she made the transition to television. People who had never saw a woman perform with such daring comedy had never seen anyone like her before her television and cinema performances. Being authentic allowed her to shatter stereotypes and prove that women could hold their own in the comedy industry. Still, she had to keep her composure for each performance. She exuded charisma, energy, and life when performing. She carried her grief off stage. The deaths of her children, broken marriages, and health problems were just a few of the personal losses she had to bear. Nonetheless, she was very careful not to let these shadows show to the world. Her admirers only ever saw the glitz and giggles, never the tears she hid. She was incredibly professional. She always gave her audiences what they wanted, regardless of the challenges she had in her personal life. The stage served as a protective barrier for her, as she hid her misery behind humor. She appeared to be an incredibly self-assured and clever woman to everyone around her. But the truth is that she frequently fought invisible fights. The path that propelled Phyllis Diller to stardom was multifaceted. A new approach was taken. She made light of her insecurity. Instead of crying over broken hearts, she found humor in them. She built a strong identity that empowered her, while entertaining millions. What the crowd witnessed was a lady whose boundless energy, infectious wit, and flamboyant eccentricity were contagious. They failed to notice the lady concealed within, who bore the burdens of loss, uncertainty, and subtle suffering. Although Phyllis Diller was very forthcoming with her life story, there were still some things she preferred to keep under wraps. Unveiling the mysteries of laughing. People laughed all during Phyllis Diller's life. She wore a burden she hardly spoke about, though, behind the scenes of the stage and costumes. She had her fair share of triumphs and tragedies throughout her life. What she withheld for a long time was the most heartbreaking aspect of her narrative, the profound tragedies and catastrophes that shaped her own existence. The pain of losing children was one of her darkest secrets. In Phyllis's first marriage to Sherwood Anderson Diller, 6 children were born. Raising children, meeting their needs, and creating a household that embraced both love and responsibility consumed her, as it does many moms. Unfortunately, her family was hit hard when one of her infants passed away. The pain of this loss was immense. Still, she kept it a secret, never letting it become a punchline or topic of public discussion. When she passed away before any of her adult children could reach adulthood, she endured an even more devastating loss. This is one of the worst things that could happen to a mother. Phyllis suffered through it in silence, shielding her audience from the anguish she felt. She concealed her sorrow under her raucous laughter and larger-than-life stage character, and she carried it with her in quiet. The loss of loved ones was just the beginning of her hardships. Her path was also impacted by a health problem. When Phyllis's heart stopped beating in 1999, it was a terrifying medical emergency. An implanted pacemaker was the only thing that could save her life. The occurrence was shocking and life-changing for the woman who lived to bring vitality to others. Another scary health obstacle she had to face was paralysis brought on by an adverse drug response. These events put her strength to the test in ways that the general public couldn't have imagined. The sickness cast a shadow on her recovery, but also served as a constant reminder of how precarious life is. She also had to deal with the emotional toll of these disasters and health challenges. The financial burden and continual expectation to support a big family were hallmarks of her previous marriage. She was emotionally and mentally drained throughout her second marriage, which she had to actor Ward Donovan. She probably felt profound sorrow, emotional turmoil, and loss as a result of these events, and the burden of juggling parenthood with the responsibilities of a burgeoning profession. She never let the public in on her troubles, whether they were with depression or finding her identity. She seemed to be in complete command of her audience at all times, grinning and laughing the whole time. Still, underlying it all, she was a strong woman trying to keep herself together. Why was Phyllis so secretive about this? The period in which she lived is relevant to the question. While she was at the peak of her profession, people wanted comedians to entertain, not show their weaknesses. The job of a performer was to make people happy, not unhappy, particularly for women. The social mores of her time frowned upon public displays of emotional distress. Her career and the loyalty of her admirers were at stake if she had divulged too much information. People tuned into her broadcasts to escape their own problems, not to hear about hers, she understood. Additionally, issues of pride and fear had to be addressed. Phyllis was afraid of coming out as fragile. She had crafted a strong persona of a courageous lady who could find humor in any situation, even in herself. Her image would have been compromised had the reality of her illness or anguish been revealed. Covering up her sadness with wigs, costumes, and funny comments made it easier for her to keep it private. She safeguarded both her family and her comic book brand. She was concerned that her children would be negatively impacted by being in the public eye. She thought she could protect her reputation and the people she cared about by keeping her secrets hidden. These duties were quietly handled by Phyllis for decades. The glitz, wit, and laughing were all that her audience noticed. Her hidden sorrows remained a mystery to them. Having said that, no secret is ever truly hidden. The barriers that Phyllis had constructed around her personal life started to crumble as the secrets spilled. The world gradually became aware of her long-hidden sufferings. A more vulnerable, sensitive, and nuanced side of the woman was revealed to her admirers and the general public, painting a different picture of the one hiding behind the jokes. A Lampshade and a Wharf. Phyllis's autobiography about her life in comedy was published in 2006, marking the first big disclosure. Her childhood, troubled marriages, and struggles were all detailed in this book. A lot of people had never grasped the complexity of her narrative until now. In her words, the murmurs of her life became the unmistakable realities. She shared in the book that her trip had been filled with more than simply laughter. It had also been a test of strength, determination, and the ability to keep going even when things became tough. It was only later in her life that her health problems were widely known. Her story of how a pacemaker had saved her life in 1999 was detailed in interviews and media publications. Her paralysis as a result of a drug response was also widely reported. Many were taken aback by these discoveries because they had always imagined her as a dynamic and energetic woman. Knowing that she had been so near death deepened my admiration for her resilience. It revealed that a fighter who had clawed her way back from the brink was standing behind the performance. The door to her secrets was further opened by documentaries and media retrospectives. They provided a more complete picture of her life by revealing how her comedic style and character had been molded by the hardships she had endured, such as the loss of children, health struggles, and marital disappointments. In fact, these anecdotes enhanced her legacy by adding depth, complexity, and significance. The general populace responded with awe and sympathy. Her devoted fan base, who had previously flocked to her comedic timing, felt an even stronger bond with her. In their eyes, she was more than just a comic. She was a mother, a lady, and a fighter. She was commended for her perseverance by her comedy peers, realizing that her brilliance was on full display in her capacity to transform suffering into mirth. Her legacy was actually enhanced by the revelations rather than tarnished. They clarified that her comedic material was based on the genuine experiences of a lady who had overcome tremendous obstacles, rather than being insincere or foolish. When seen in light of her hardships, her work took on a new significance. The revelation of these secrets helped to reshape public perception of her career. Her self-deprecating humor, inflated imperfections, and fearless energy started to seem like more than simply a performance to them. She utilized them as coping mechanisms when she was sick or grieving. Her humor served as more than just amusement. It revealed the resilience of a lady who would not be broken. But how did keeping this secret affect her career and personal life? To discover more, continue watching. Residing in anguish concealed by laughter, a seemingly endless supply of vitality, was Phyllis Diller's public persona, a lady whose joy lay in bringing a smile to the faces of those around her. However, she was coping with illness and loss behind the scenes, unbeknownst to most of the world. Her distinctive laughter could never fully convey the impact of the 2 adult children she lost, and the struggles she had with her health on her inner life. She overcame a heart attack in 1999, a pharmaceutical reaction that left her paralyzed, and the lingering effects of her own sadness. She still loves humor, but these things made her stronger and more resilient than before she put on her theatrical makeup. Laughter became her life's work. It saved lives. Despite the fact that her grief could have crushed her will to live, she found solace in comedy. Not only did she provide joy to the audience with each joke and laugh, but it also helped her cope with her grief. Even while her comedic style exuded an air of hyperbole and intensity, it subtly revealed her inner resilience. She will not allow herself to be silenced by tragedy or disease. She made decisions about her job based on her underlying challenges. Despite the toll it took on her health, she continued touring and performing for a long time. Despite her physical discomfort, she found purpose in standing in front of an audience. However, her enthusiasm started to wane in the early 2000s, and she reluctantly decided to stop from stand-up comedy in 2002. According to her, the vitality just vanished. However, inventiveness persisted even after retirement. She dabbled in voice acting, painted extensively, and wrote extensively. These pursuits were easier on her physique while yet letting her show the same vivacity that won her adoration. Even in her private life, she maintained her unwavering strength. As a mother, she carried the unending grief of losing 2 children. This pain would never go away. She managed to be there for her other children, while still juggling the responsibilities of a parent and a successful profession. She found security and companionship in her long-term partnership with Robert Hastings, which lasted over 10 years. Nonetheless, she exercised caution in her public disclosures. She showed how much she treasured a private place where she could be authentic by fiercely protecting her home life, in contrast to her carefree stage persona. The comedy itself became the most effective means of self-care for her. She managed to find humor in marriage, aging, and physical attractiveness, and her work entertained millions. In reality, though, there were undercurrents of a lady accepting her hardships in those jokes. While she was forthright about certain topics, like her plastic surgeries, she chose to keep quiet about other personal struggles. Her resiliency was laid bare by this equilibrium. She maintained an appropriate level of security to protect her wounds while yet being approachable and open. She refused to let herself be dragged down by illness or loss. Instead, she always got well, kept working, and found new ways to live life to the fullest. The Last Curtain by Phyllis Diller. The physical effects of Phyllis Diller's long and hard life started to become apparent by the time she was 80 years old in 1997. Her hilarious antics, outrageous outfits, and bold humor had been captivating audiences for decades. Despite her charisma and intelligence, she was starting to feel the strain of time. She had a cardiac arrest in 1999 while hospitalized. She battled her way back, her resiliency shining through despite the scary shock. Even after doctors implanted a pacemaker, she had a long road to recovery. She had to face one of the most physically challenging struggles of her life after becoming paralyzed due to a pharmaceutical reaction. Slowly but surely, she regained the ability to walk with the help of therapy, demonstrating that her resolve was as powerful as her jokes. The stage, which had been her anchor, became increasingly inaccessible as she drew nearer to 90. She could no longer muster the amount of energy required to perform stand-up. It was a tough decision, but she retired from stand-up comedy in 2002. She didn't just fade away. It was a dramatic repositioning of her body, as if she were voluntarily stepping away from the limelight. Her legacy lives on through her voice acting, paintings, and writings. Even after she retired, even when the microphone was put down, she still wouldn't allow her imagination to wander. She still had problems with her health. She was going to celebrate her 90th birthday on The Tonight Show in 2007, but she had to cancel due to a broken back. In spite of this, she remained loyal to form and discovered methods to enjoy life away from the spotlight of television. She kept busy in her own way, going to events, giving interviews, and showing everyone that she was just as intelligent and funny as before. In 2012, Phyllis accepted a Lifetime Achievement Award from her hometown of Lima, Ohio, during her farewell interview as she approached the end of her life. Her pioneering spirit and comedic timing were both acknowledged as she sat among her fellow comedians. There was a subtle recognition of the barriers she had shattered and the lives she had touched in that moment. She was 95 years old when she died at her Brentwood home in Los Angeles a few months later. On August 20th, 2012, her laughter continued unbridled until her remains were dispersed at sea, leaving her spirit free and unbound. A new depth of significance was added to her work when the concealed realities of her life were revealed. She was no longer making lighthearted remarks when she spoke about marriage, beauty, and becoming older. Subtly camouflaged as laughter, they were battle cries. Ironically, they conveyed the spirit of a lady who joked about her imperfections while secretly bearing wounds, who laughed despite her anguish. At one point, her viewers believed she was merely making fun of minor inconveniences in life. Even though she was sick, grieving, and heartbroken, she was laughing it off. In your opinion, how was Phyllis Diller's life? Is she competent in handling her challenges, in your opinion? Leave a comment with your ideas, and if you want to see more fascinating stories about your favorite celebs, don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and press the bell icon. Thanks for watching.